In 2003, Chinese President Hu Jintao uttered a phrase that became doctrine. At a closed session of the Central Committee, he named it the Malacca Dilemma. The essence of it comes down to a few numbers. 80% of China's oil imports pass through a single strait, the Strait of Malacca. At its narrowest point, it is just 1¾ miles wide. Every day, 16 million barrels of oil pass through that choke point. That is 25% of all global maritime trade. One blocked strait, and the world's largest economy begins to suffocate within a matter of weeks. In 2026, when Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, the entire world turned its eyes sharply toward the Strait of Malacca. And at that moment, China already had something else. A pipe. A pipeline 479 miles long. From the port of Kyaukphyu on the Bay of Bengal shore, through mountains, jungles, and 3 Myanmar states, to an oil refinery in Kunming. Running parallel to it, a gas pipeline 493 miles long. This pipeline saves 750 miles of sea route. It bypasses the Strait of Malacca entirely, and it is already running. But why does China need all this? Let's break it down. The Strait of Malacca separates the Malay Peninsula from the island of Sumatra. At its narrowest, it is 1¾ miles across, less than the width of some rivers. 100,000 vessels pass through this point every year, more than through the Suez and Panama canals combined. It is the main artery of trade between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. China consumes roughly 14 million barrels of oil per day. It imports about 70% of that, and more than 80% of its imported oil passes through the Strait of Malacca. That means roughly 8 million barrels per day flow through a single corridor less than 2 miles wide. The U.S. 7th Fleet maintains a constant presence in the region. India watches from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, positioned right at the entrance to the strait. In the event of any serious conflict, the Strait of Malacca could be blocked, and China would lose the majority of its oil imports. That is precisely why, in 2003, Hu Jintao coined the term Malacca Dilemma. From that moment on, supply diversification became the central priority of Chinese energy policy. Off the western coast of Myanmar, in Rakhine State, in the Bay of Bengal, a small island called Mandalay. Here, off the shores of the quiet provincial town of Kyaukphyu, the oil pipeline begins. Kyaukphyu was not chosen by accident. It is a deep-water port, capable of receiving the largest class of tankers, very large crude carriers. These vessels transport oil from the Persian Gulf, Africa, and Russia. They cannot enter the Strait of Malacca, their draft runs too deep, but they can unload at Kyaukphyu. From there, the oil travels by pipeline, without ships, without straits, without maritime risk. The pipeline starts directly from the island. The first 3 1/3 miles run beneath the seabed, from the terminal on Mandalay Island to the mainland shore. Then, through mountain ranges, river valleys, and the jungles of Myanmar, 479 miles to the Chinese border. Alongside the oil pipeline, China is developing a special economic zone and a deep-water container port at Kyaukphyu. Together, these create a full transit hub, a point of entry for Chinese infrastructure into the Indian Ocean. From the coast to the Chinese border, the pipeline crosses 4 administrative regions of Myanmar: Rakhine State, Magway Region, Mandalay Region, and Shan State. Technically, this is one of the most complex pipeline routes in the world. Mountain ridges reaching 6,500 feet, seasonal floods, seismically active zones. Key cities along the route: Mandalay, Myanmar's second-largest city, the former capital of the last Burmese kingdom, founded in 1857. A major pipeline substation is located here, and this is where the main road north begins. Lashio, the gateway to Myanmar's mountainous north. Historically, the Burma Road started here, a supply route built in 1937 and 38 to move goods over the mountains. Today, pipes carry what trucks once hauled. Namkham, a border town at the confluence of the Namtu and Ruili rivers. Here, the pipeline crosses rugged mountain terrain before its final push to the border. Ruili, a Chinese border city in Yunnan Province. For centuries, Ruili has been the traditional center of the jade trade, one of the most significant items of commerce along this border. Today, oil from the Persian Gulf flows through it. After crossing the border, the pipeline enters Yunnan Province. The endpoint is Kunming, Yunnan's capital, where PetroChina operates a refinery with a capacity of 13 million metric tons per year, roughly 7% of all oil refining capacity in China. The figures are striking. A tanker carrying oil from the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Malacca to ports in eastern China travels roughly 5,000 nautical miles. The tanker carrying the same oil to Kyaukphyu travels about 1,500 nautical miles less. That translates to 4 to 7 days saved at sea. But the savings in time are not the point. The point is security. The Strait of Malacca is bypassed entirely. Oil enters China from the west through Myanmar, not from the southeast through the straits. The gas pipeline began operating in 2013. The oil pipeline was completed in 2014, but did not reach full commercial operation until 2017, after lengthy negotiations over transit terms. Myanmar initially demanded higher transit fees. China pushed back hard. Eventually, terms were agreed upon, and the pipe went to work. The oil pipeline's design capacity is 22 million metric tons per year, approximately 442,000 barrels per day. That is a meaningful but not enormous share of China's total imports. The pipeline is not a replacement for the Strait of Malacca. It is insurance and an additional route. Kyaukphyu is not an isolated project. It is one node in a strategy that analysts call the string of pearls. China has been systematically building or investing in port infrastructure all along the rim of the Indian Ocean. Gwadar Port in Pakistan, 43 miles from the Strait of Hormuz. Hambantota Port in Sri Lanka, in the center of the Indian Ocean. Kyaukphyu Port in Myanmar, at the entrance to the Bay of Bengal. Each of these pearls is a logistical foothold, a place where vessels can dock and resupply, a point of observation and influence in the surrounding region. Linked together, these ports form a chain of presence stretching from the Arabian Sea to the South China Sea. American strategists call this a chain of facilities that could potentially allow China to exert influence over global trade routes. Chinese officials call it commercial infrastructure under the Belt and Road Initiative. The difference in naming is significant. The difference in strategic meaning is minimal. Before the pipeline, Yunnan Province was one of China's most economically remote regions, mountainous, landlocked, with no major industrial centers. The pipeline fundamentally transformed its role. Kunming, Yunnan's capital, became a refining hub for Middle Eastern oil serving southwestern China. PetroChina's plant can process 7% of all the oil refined in the country. This represents a shift away from coastal import dependency towards self-sufficiency for China's interior regions. Under the Belt and Road Initiative, China is planning further development toward Myanmar, with prospects for building a railway from Kunming to Kyaukphyu, 500 miles long. That would create a full transportation corridor, not just for oil, but for goods that currently travel by sea through the Strait of Malacca. Yunnan is China's most logical land gateway to the Indian Ocean, and that gateway is already open. The pipeline through Myanmar is the answer to a 20-year strategic fear, the answer to the Malacca dilemma that Hu Jintao articulated in 2003. 80% of oil through one strait is a vulnerability. One pipeline through Myanmar does not eliminate it, but it makes China slightly less dependent on a single point of failure. And in geopolitics, every percentage point of independence carries a price. In May of 2026, when the Strait of Hormuz came under threat, The entire world watched the Strait of Malacca. At that moment, China was already looking at a different map.